Have you ever found yourself in a conversation that spirals out of control, where emotions run high and you're left wondering, how the heck did we end up here? Whether it's with a colleague, a family member, or even a friend, difficult conversations are a part of life, yet most of us are terrible at handling them. What if I told you there's a way to not only survive those tough talks, but actually come out stronger, calmer, and more in control? In this video, I'm about to share with you a stoic approach that flips everything you thought you knew about conflict on its head. Trust me, this isn't your typical be nice and listen advice. No, we're diving deep into mindset, emotional control, and how to steer even the most challenging conversations with grace and power. Stick around, because by the end of this video, you'll have a set of tools that will change the way you handle conflict forever. Ready to level up your communication game? Let's get started. Number 1. The silent shield. Have you ever been in one of those conversations where the temperature rises, the words fly, and suddenly you find yourself trapped in a battle of egos? You know the type. When you're trying to explain your point, but the more you speak, the more things spiral out of control. It's as if every word you say just adds fuel to the fire. Sounds familiar, right? Now you might be thinking, but I have to speak up. I need to defend myself. And trust me, I get it. It's natural to want to clarify, to correct, to get your side heard. But here's the truth. Sometimes doing nothing speaks louder than anything you could say. Yes, trust me on this. The next time you're facing a heated conversation, try this. Embrace the silent shield. Now, I know what you're thinking. Silence? You mean just sit there and do nothing? Exactly. But not in the way you're imagining. It's not about ignoring the person or being passive-aggressive. It's about choosing to stay still, mentally and physically, to let the other person's words hang in the air while you gather your thoughts. Here's why it works. Silence is powerful. It disarms. It doesn't feed into the chaos. It creates space. You see, when you stay silent, you're not just avoiding unnecessary arguments. You're also showing that you are in control of your emotions, not reacting impulsively. Think about it. The last time you were in a heated conversation, didn't you find that the more you said, the more tangled the situation became? It's like adding fuel to the fire. Except, what if you became the fire extinguisher instead? Silence cools things down. Let me give you a real-life example. I was once in a meeting where a colleague was attacking my idea in front of everyone. You know the type. Loud, dismissive, and relentless. The old me would have jumped in, fired back a defense, and tried to explain why my idea was valid. But instead, I stayed quiet. I let the words wash over me. Everyone in the room was waiting for me to react, but I just sat there, took a deep breath, and let the silence settle. Within seconds, the energy shifted. The tension that had been in the air slowly melted away, and the conversation turned to a more constructive tone. Suddenly, I wasn't the one caught in the chaos. I had created my own space, one that wasn't driven by emotion or conflict, but by calm. The best part. This isn't about passive aggression or avoiding confrontation. It's about reclaiming your emotional space, your mental clarity, and your inner peace. You see, when you resist the urge to defend, explain, or justify yourself, you free yourself from the emotional weight of the situation. You stop feeding into the drama and start showing that you value your dignity more than the need to win a conversation. This is about strength. It's about being the kind of person who knows that their silence is not weakness. It's the quiet confidence that doesn't need to shout to be heard. You have the power to change the dynamics, to stay grounded, and to let the moment pass without being dragged into the emotional storm. So, the next time you find yourself in a tense conversation, remember, your silence is your shield. It's your power, your peace, and your dignity. And trust me, it speaks volumes. Number 2. The obstacle mirror. What if I told you that the next time someone criticizes you, you could turn that criticism into something that actually benefits you? Sounds a little crazy, right? You might be thinking, but wait, how is it helpful for someone to tear me down? Yes, trust me on this. What if the real obstacle in any difficult conversation isn't the person attacking you, but the way you're seeing the situation? What if instead of seeing their words as an attack, you saw them as a mirror, reflecting their own fears, insecurities, or frustrations back at them? I know, this might sound a bit counterintuitive. The idea of using someone else's negativity to your advantage may not be your first instinct. But here's the thing. We've all been there, right? You know the type. The conversations where someone criticizes you, and suddenly you're caught in that mental loop of self-doubt. You start to second-guess yourself. Am I doing something wrong? Maybe I should have said this differently. It's like you're being pulled into their perspective, questioning your own worth or intentions. But what if instead of shrinking or defending yourself, you shifted your perspective? What if, in that moment, you took a step back and asked yourself, what's really going on for this person? This is where the obstacle mirror comes in. Instead of viewing their criticism as a personal attack, you look at it as a reflection of something deeper within them, an insecurity, fear, or frustration they haven't fully dealt with. You see their words not as a direct hit to your character, but as a way to understand their state of mind. By doing this, you step outside the emotional reaction and start seeing the situation with clarity. Let me give you a real-life example. A while back, I was working on a project at my job, and I was confident about the direction I was taking. Then, one of my colleagues, who always seemed a bit stressed and on edge, came in with a barrage of criticism. "This won't work. You didn't think this through. I don't know why you even tried this in the first place," they said, their tone sharp. Normally, I would have gotten defensive. I would have felt the need to explain myself, justify my choices, or even get frustrated. But instead, I paused for a second and remembered the obstacle mirror. Instead of taking their words personally, I started asking myself, what's going on with them right now? What's this really about? And then it clicked. My colleague was overwhelmed with their own workload, stressed about deadlines, and probably frustrated with the pressure. Their criticism wasn't about me. It was about their own feelings of inadequacy. Once I saw that, I could respond calmly without getting sucked into the drama. I acknowledged their concerns, but instead of arguing, I redirected the conversation towards solutions. By understanding the real obstacle in front of me, their frustration, I was able to turn the situation into a productive exchange rather than a defensive standoff. The beauty of this is that it's not about letting people walk all over you or ignoring valid concerns. It's about choosing not to let their emotional baggage land on your shoulders. It's about reclaiming your peace by recognizing that their words are more about them than about you. When you start using the obstacle mirror, you shift the power. You don't need to defend or explain, you can just listen and understand. And the best part? It feels empowering. Instead of reacting impulsively, you take control of the narrative. This is your space, your mental energy, and your emotional well-being we're talking about. You don't need to over-explain or get defensive. You have the right to stand firm without being dragged into someone else's emotional turbulence. So, the next time you find yourself in a difficult conversation, remember, what if their criticism is just a reflection of their own struggles? Your space, your peace, and your dignity don't need to be compromised by someone else's emotional outburst. And when you use the obstacle mirror, you don't just survive the conversation, you come out stronger. Number 3, the ego trap escape. You've been there. You're in the middle of a conversation, and it's escalating. Someone challenges you, questions your ideas, maybe even throws in a sharp comment. And what do? You feel that heat rise in your chest. The need to defend yourself becomes almost overwhelming. It's like your ego kicks into overdrive, telling you that you can't back down, that you need to win this, that your identity is at stake. Now you might be thinking, but how can I just let someone talk down to me? I get it. It feels like a punch to the gut. But here's the thing. What if I told you that the real power comes not from defending your ego, but from letting it go? Yes, trust me on this. It sounds counterintuitive, right? In a world where we're taught to protect our pride, defend our position, and always make sure we're heard, the idea of stepping back and letting go of that ego feels almost like a betrayal. But here's the secret. Letting go of that need to win an argument and embracing humility can actually give you the upper hand. It's not about losing. It's about choosing your battles and realizing that some of the biggest wins come from letting go of your need to be right. You know the type of situation I'm talking about. You're in a heated discussion with a colleague or even a friend, and they've said something that gets under your skin. Maybe they misunderstand you, or worse, they insult you. The urge to defend yourself is almost instinctual, right? We've all been there, feeling like we can't just let it slide, like we need to prove ourselves or show them they're wrong. It's human nature. But what if instead of firing back, you just didn't? Instead of battling it out, you acknowledged the moment, took a breath, and chose to let go of that urge to react? Now I know what you're thinking. But isn't that passive? Won't they think I'm weak? Here's where it gets interesting. By stepping away from that defensive instinct, you're not showing weakness. You're showing immense self-control. You're taking the power back. The other person might be expecting you to argue, to defend your ego, but instead, you become the calm in the storm. You let them talk, and when the dust settles, you can choose to engage in a way that is rational, not emotional. And guess what? That's when you'll have the real power. The ego trap doesn't need to catch you if you decide to let it go. Let me share a story from my own life. A few months ago, I had a disagreement with a close friend. She misinterpreted something I said, and suddenly we were at odds. My first instinct, fire back, defend myself, tell her she was wrong. But instead, I paused. I took a deep breath, and instead of arguing, I asked, "What exactly made you feel that way?" Her response wasn't an attack. It was her own frustration and misunderstanding coming to the surface. By not reacting, I created a space for us to both understand each other better. I wasn't trying to win, I was trying to connect. The conversation turned from conflict to collaboration, and that moment of letting go, it saved our relationship and deepened our trust. This isn't about allowing people to walk all over you. It's about knowing when to hold your ground and when to let go of the need to be right. It's about reclaiming your peace instead of getting sucked into every battle your ego wants to fight. You're not weak for letting go of your pride. In fact, you're showing incredible strength. You're saying, "I'm confident enough not to let my ego control me." You're stepping into a place where your emotional intelligence and self-awareness are your superpowers. So the next time you feel that ego trap closing in on you, remember, you don't need to win every argument to be victorious. Your true strength lies in your ability to walk away, to not get caught in the trap, and to maintain your peace. Your peace, your dignity, your emotional freedom, that's the real prize. So next time, instead of reacting, take a step back. Let your ego relax and watch how much stronger and more in control you become. You've got this. Number 4, the emotional bankrupt. Ever felt like you're emotionally drained after a difficult conversation? You know, when someone hits you with a criticism, or a misunderstanding turns into an all-out argument, and suddenly you feel like you've spent all your emotional energy. I mean, it's like they've taken a withdrawal from your emotional bank and you're left with a deficit. Sound familiar? Now, you might be thinking, how on earth do I stop that from happening? Am I just supposed to tough it out? Yes, trust me on this. There's a better way. It's all about emotional bankruptcy. And no, it's not as negative as it sounds. Stick with me. Here's the thing. Most of us don't know when to close the emotional account. You know the type, those situations where someone starts pushing your buttons and instead of stopping, you keep giving. You explain, you justify, you over-explain, and the more you do, the more exhausted you feel, like you're running on empty. We've all been there, right? You try so hard to make the other person see your side, but it's like pouring water into a leaky bucket. No matter how much you pour, it's never enough, and you're just left feeling drained and defeated. Now, what if I told you there was a way to stop the withdrawal before it even happens? What if you could preserve your emotional energy, regain control, and actually get to the heart of the issue without burning yourself out? The key is simple: emotional bankruptcy. But here's the twist. It's not about cutting people off emotionally or shutting down. It's about knowing when you've given enough, when your emotional bank is empty, and it's time to stop the flow of energy. Imagine this. When you feel your patience, your empathy, your words running thin, instead of continuing to give, you pause. You acknowledge the emotional withdrawal and set a boundary. I know what you might be thinking. Isn't that selfish? Shouldn't I keep pushing through to fix things? I get it. It feels counterintuitive, especially when you care about the other person and want to make things right. But here's the real deal. You can't keep giving emotionally without refilling your own reserves. The more you drain yourself in these conversations, the more you'll start to feel resentful or powerless. And that's when things really start to break down. Emotional bankruptcy isn't about avoiding conflict. It's about knowing when you've given enough and respecting your own emotional limits. Let me give you a real-life example. Last month, I was in a conversation with a friend. We were discussing a sensitive topic, and as the discussion went on, I could feel myself getting more and more drained. I kept explaining my point, hoping that eventually they would understand. But the more I gave, the more the conversation seemed to be going in circles. That's when it hit me. I was emotionally bankrupt. I was running on fumes. So instead of trying to explain myself further, I paused, took a breath and said, I can see that we're not getting anywhere right now, and I'm starting to feel really drained. Let's take a break and revisit this later. The shift was immediate. I respected my own limits, and that moment of self-awareness allowed both of us to step back, reset, and approach the conversation with a fresh perspective. This is about reclaiming your emotional space, your peace, your dignity. It's about recognizing that you don't have to explain everything. You don't have to give and give until you have nothing left. There's a power in stopping before you empty your tank, in protecting your emotional energy for what truly matters. And the best part? By recognizing when to stop giving, you give yourself the chance to come back to the conversation when you have something meaningful to contribute, rather than reacting out of exhaustion or frustration. So next time you feel your emotional bank account depleting in a conversation, don't be afraid to take a step back. Set your boundary. Recognize when enough is enough. This isn't about avoiding conflict or being selfish. It's about self-respect and knowing that your emotional well-being is worth preserving. Your space, your peace, your dignity, these are your emotional assets. Protect them. You've got this. Number 5. The value vault. Have you ever felt like you're constantly giving away your time, energy, or even your self-worth, only to realize later that you didn't get much in return? You know those moments when you're running on empty, offering more of yourself than you should, but somehow still feeling unappreciated or taken for granted. Now you might be thinking, but I'm a giver. I'm just being kind, right? Yes, trust me on this. There's a big difference between being generous and letting your value be taken without acknowledgement. It's time to introduce you to the concept of the value vault. You've probably been there, whether it's at work, in a friendship, or even with family, constantly pouring yourself into situations, trying to be helpful, trying to make everyone happy, yet at the end of the day, you feel depleted. You might even start feeling a little resentful. And here's why. You've been giving out your value like it's an unlimited resource with no vault to store it. We've all been there, offering our energy, ideas, and compassion freely, but at the cost of our own peace. But what if I told you that you can still be generous, still offer your time, but with boundaries that protect your emotional and mental reserves? That's where the value vault comes in. Picture this. Your value, whether it's your time, your expertise, or your energy, is precious. And just like any valuable asset, it deserves protection. The value vault is a mental and emotional strategy that helps you store up your value, deciding when and where to spend it. Instead of handing it out on autopilot, you start recognizing when you need to deposit more value into your own well-being and when it's time to withdraw it in a meaningful way. Why? Because just like any good bank account, if you keep withdrawing without making deposits, you'll hit zero. And that's when you feel emotionally bankrupt. Now, I know what you might be thinking. This sounds a bit cold or calculating, doesn't it? Shouldn't we just give freely without worrying about how much we're getting back? I get it. It sounds counterintuitive, especially if you're the type of person who loves to help others. But here's the catch. By setting up this vault, you're not being selfish. You're being strategic. You're ensuring that your value is only given in places where it truly counts, where it's respected, and where it has the potential to be reciprocated in some meaningful way. It's about maintaining balance so that you don't end up feeling burned out or taken advantage of. Let me tell you about a situation that really opened my eyes to the power of the value vault. A while back, I was helping a friend with a big project. It seemed like the right thing to do. I gave my time, my ideas, and a lot of emotional energy, thinking that it was a meaningful investment. But after a while, I realized I wasn't getting much in return. No appreciation, no acknowledgement. At first, I felt guilty, like I should just keep giving. But then, I remembered my vault. I took a step back and realized that I wasn't replenishing my own energy. So, I set a boundary. I told my friend I needed to focus on my own work and mental health. It was hard at first, but guess what? That small act of self-preservation not only helped me feel better, but it also made me realize that my value was far more important than being stretched thin. That vault isn't just for you, it's for the relationships you want to preserve too. This is about reclaiming your time, your energy, and your self-worth. By creating your value vault, you empower yourself to make decisions that honor your well-being, not just the demands of others. No more running on empty, no more guilt about saying no, and no more feeling like you're constantly giving without anything in return. You have the right to decide when and where to invest your value, and the beauty of it is, the more you protect it, the more you'll have to give when it really matters. You're not just a source to be drained, you are valuable. So take a moment and think about your own vault. How often are you making deposits for yourself? And when is it time to close the vault and stop the withdrawals? This isn't about being cold or distant. It's about respecting your value and learning how to give in a way that's sustainable. Your time, your energy, your ideas, they are precious, and you deserve to guard them with care. Your space, your peace, your dignity, let that be the currency you protect. The value vault is yours to manage. Fill it wisely. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope this video gave you some valuable insights on how to handle difficult conversations with more ease and confidence. If you found it helpful, don't forget to hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow and reach more people. And if you want more content like this, be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss